Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to Americans for Truth Live. I'm Pete LaBarbera of Americans for Truth. I'm here with Mike Heath. Actually, I'm sitting in my car in Virginia. I'm visiting D.C. for a week, and we're doing the show by phone. I'm so proud of myself because my kids are always teasing me and how tech unknowledgeable I am, and now we're doing a show from a phone in a car. So that's progress, right, Mike?
Amen, brother.
You've always been so much better at tech than I have. But anyways, I appreciate Mike stepping in yesterday. You did a great job, Mike. I really enjoyed your talk, and I wish every American in the country could hear it. Just that brief presentation you made about morality and the pro-family movement. It was wonderful, and that's why I'm so blessed to have you as a friend, and we're blessed to have you back active in the movement, at least on this show. You know, Mike, I got to say, I don't think 90% of the pastors in this country could have come close to articulating our cause and why we do what we do as good as you did yesterday.
Well, Pete, you're very kind, but all the credit goes to God, to Jesus, and to the Christian Civic League of Maine, because that was when I had the honor of working for them. It was a great group of people who had tremendous courage and wisdom.
Yeah, and I got to say, I think their courage factor decreased when you left, but that's another story for another time. just like I got to say, just like I think focus on the families, courage factor decreased dramatically when Dr. Dobson either left on his own or, as many believe, was sort of pushed out. I don't know the whole story there, but that's the reality of life. And Mike, we had a lot of things to talk about. I was part of a wonderful event yesterday called Gone Too Far. I want to talk about that. We're actually going to play video from that. I think Jared's got it teed up. Just a wonderful thing where white and black brothers in Christ talked about the truth and defended the truth together. And I think this is how it always should have been. We are brothers in Christ. Anybody who believes in Jesus is part of the family of God. And it's such a wonderful thing. It's a leveling factor. And, you know, there's no place for racism in the Christian movement. And it was just great to stand with all these wonderful people. And we'll play some video. But first, Mike, I want to talk about the State of the Union. I think there was a lot to love in the State of the Union. There was also some disappointing stuff. My favorite part of it, did you watch it, first of all?
I did not.
Okay, well, my favorite part of it, and I think you would like this part too, Mike, two parts. One was Trump, and I don't know if you could tee this up, Jared. Trump said, America will never be a socialist country. And I was like, yeah, man, we don't, if America ever becomes fully socialist, and I'm not even talking communist socialist, I'm talking, you know, radical Bernie Sanders socialism, we're toast, and we're becoming more socialist, and Trump has put a break on that. But he came out and said it, and I thought, you know, this is one of the reasons I think so many people love Trump, even if they don't love everything Trump does, and of course some of the crude things he's done in the past and everything. Of course, nobody supports it. I was a Cruz guy before I was a Trump guy. I supported Trump when he got the nomination. But I mean, how many people, Mike, how many Republicans would have come right out in the State of the Union and said, America will never become a socialist country?
None in my memory. which is why, Peter, I supported Trump from the very beginning. And the reason I started supporting him when he came up with that pet name for Bush, Jeb Bush. And
yeah,
when he did that, I realized that this guy had the fight in him. This guy was
and he doesn't care. He doesn't care so much what the media think. I mean, I think this is Trump's greatest contribution to the country, to the conservative movement, to the pro-family movement. He's teaching us don't care what the media mob think. Okay, the other part, Mike, before I get off this, the good stuff of the State of the Union was when Trump said he supports a ban on third trimester abortions. He came right out and said it, which I mean, I think Trump is now the most pro-life president we've ever had. And he came right out and said it. And if he keeps saying it, he's going to put the Democrats with their radical pro-abortion ideology on the defense, because they cannot want to talk about late trimester abortions, which are effectively infanticide.
That's I didn't know he did that. I'm glad to learn he did that. That's awesome, because from a political perspective, it's pure brilliance. Because you're absolutely right. He's teeing it up for a presidential campaign coming up in 2 years, where the Democrats are not going to have an answer to this.
Make the Democrats defend infanticide. Make the Democrats defend what the Virginia Governor Northam did, this guy who's in terrible, terrible trouble now, all of his own making. Of course, the media found the blackface comments offensive, which they were, of course, but the media did not pay as much attention to the awful comments that Governor Northam of Virginia said, defending abortion right up to birth. If there's a deformity in the child, this is obscene. As I said before, I have a Down syndrome brother. Abortion is a very special issue to me because we are a country which now is aborting people who aren't perfect, or when it's not, the timing of the pregnancy is not convenient. Mike, a friend of mine, actually my sister, knew a woman who had an abortion because her pregnancy, she was living with a guy or sleeping with a guy before they were married. Her pregnancy was inconvenient and she didn't want to walk down the aisle of her marriage pregnant. That is why she had an abortion. Can you imagine that?
Well, I can, because I've been working the issue for so many years. And of course, they created the law in such a way that health exception, you can drive a Mack truck through the health exception. It's basically, right, for any reason, you can get an abortion through all 9 months of pregnancy.
Okay, so here's Trump at his best, putting the Democrats on the defense. Of course, most of the Democrats did not stand and cheer when he said this about infanticide. I don't know if you can pull that up, Jared. It was spectacular. But again, Trump is the genius strategist. He knows you have to play offense. We lose when we play defense. And of course, go ahead.
Cheered with delight upon the passage of legislation that would allow a baby to be ripped from the mother's womb moments from birth. These are living, feeling, beautiful babies who will never get the chance to share their love and their dreams with the world. And then we had the case of the governor of Virginia, where he stated he would execute a baby after birth. To defend the dignity of every person, I am asking Congress to pass legislation to prohibit the late-term abortion of children who can feel pain in the mother's womb.
That's brilliant rhetoric. Brilliant.
Isn't that? And notice. Look at they're the women who are protesting in white. They wore white. It was an idea of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez to celebrate women. You know, it's this kind of feminist, let's all focus on women thing. Look at them all sitting down intentionally when Trump is saying we are going to stop what is de facto infanticide. Shame on the Democrats. Shame on this radical feminist ideology. And Trump's gonna run it over if only he sticks with this. Now, I want to segue to what is I think is the most unfortunate part from a pro-family perspective on Trump's speech. Guess what he did not mention at all, Mike?
Well, I'm sure that he didn't get anywhere near the so-called gay issue, right?
He did not only touch the gay issue, the homosexual agenda, the gay marriage agenda. He did not even mention the win that Trump had. And Jared, if you could pull up the article from The Hill that I sent you. Trump won a victory at the Supreme Court defending his ban, or it's a partial ban, on transgendered individuals serving in the military. The goal of this is, folks, Americans don't want to pay for these sex change, so-called operations of transgender soldiers. People can go into the military and they be transgender and they hey, here's a free ticket to pay for my grotesque, body disfiguring transgender so-called sex change operations. If you're watching this and you're wondering what the heck is LaBarbera talking about, Mike, we're talking about procedures which defy nature and attempt to turn a man into a woman and vice versa, sometimes through horrific practices such as removing the healthy breasts of a female. Can you imagine, Mike? Breasts are what God gave women, to feed their children. You know, men can't have that. Men can't have the thrill of feeding a child. Women are by nature, by God's design, more closer in their relationship with their children because they literally supply their needs. This is how God designed it. And you have this crazy ideology, this transgender ideology, which is telling a woman that if you want to be a man in your mind, in your, let's face it, disordered thinking, or whatever, for whatever reason, maybe your dad raised you and they made clear from when you were a little girl that they actually wanted a boy. And Mike, this happens all the time, and vice versa as well. The parents wanted a girl and they got a boy, and oh no, so they start treating their boy like a girl, or vice versa. For whatever reason, you are a 20-something woman and you want to be a man because you feel that's who you are. And you go, and there are actual doctors, Mike, they call themselves doctors, who help or not help. They do these operations in which they remove the healthy breasts of these women, the life-giving breasts of these women, to make their chests flat like a man. And Trump's transgender ban would effectively stop anybody from going through the so-called transitions at the taxpayer dole in the military. I think that's a great thing, don't you, Mike?
Well, you know what's pathetic about this, Peter, is the fact that no one will hear what you just said because for some reason Christianity has become so nice that we can't even talk anywhere. We can't even think privately thoughts like the one you just expressed and be a good Christian. Because what being a good Christian about is now is it's all about using the right nice word.
Yeah, it's about style, not substance. It's about being nice. And I think somebody, I can't remember who said this, was it Sandy Rios or somebody? We're nicer than Jesus. Christians have niceness disease. But let me get to back to the speech, Mike. So the Supreme Court upholds Trump's partial transgender military ban, and yet Trump does not even mention it at the State of the Union. Now, here's what's even more shameful, Mike, and I think you'll agree with this. The pro-family movement wasn't even, those of us fighting big LGBTQ, they weren't even expecting Trump to mention this at the State of the Union. We've become so used to being sort of the silent, we're the ones nobody talks about anymore because it's the most politically incorrect issue now. To fight big gay and big trans is probably the most politically incorrect thing you can do anymore. It's very easy to be pro-life now. It's especially easy to talk about banning, for goodness sake, infanticide, come on. The Democrats are so out of touch on that issue, it's not funny, and they're going to lose big if Trump does what he's doing. But I believe the American people would be with Trump if he articulated this transgender thing. What if Trump said what I just said, but even better with his speechwriters? Mike, what if Trump said, hey, I know you as Americans do not want to fund, you do not want to use your taxpayer dollars to pay for transsexual sex reassignment surgeries, or whatever they're calling it, gender reassignment surgeries. I know you don't want to pay for that. And so we're keeping that out because the military is about winning wars. It's not about accommodating social experiments, especially this radical transgenderism ideology, which is utterly insane. Telling a biological woman that she can become a man and vice versa is insanity. It is anti-nature. It is anti-God. It is deviant to the core. I mean, what if Trump had articulated that at the State of the Union?
Well, there's no downside to that being articulated with his base. It would in fact motivate them and energize them more than they're energized by the abortion issue. If you could combine, right. If you could add that rhetoric to what he's saying on abortion, it would only help him with the people. But here's the key: it would hurt him supremely with the oligarchy, with the rich, and with the institutions of the West. It would hurt him. I mean, look at the Pope. Look at what the Pope is doing right now. He's doing everything he can to obfuscate the crisis within his church, which is a crisis over what? Homosexuality.
Right.
In the priesthood. He's doing everything he can to obfuscate.
Yeah,
And
the Pope, I worked with probably the best pro-family website in the world, one of the best, LifeSite News, just a wonderful organization. I need to write for them more. I haven't written lately, but I used to be a writer for LifeSite, and they were all over the Pope because they are conservative, principled Catholics, and they said, look, the Pope isn't representing us. The Pope was soft on homosexuality like many leaders of the Catholic Church. But Mike, you went to the oligarchy. You're right. There are major GOP donors, major Republican Party donors who are saying bug off the LGBT issue. And so you're right. And so by not mentioning this victory at the Supreme Court, upholding his transgender military ban, which he announced by Twitter, I think you remember that a long time ago, early on in his presidency, by not discussing it, it really cripples us in making our case in the culture, because Trump has the bully pulpit. That's what the presidency is all about, and Trump's pretty good at it, although he could do far better. And so, Mike, give me an idea for what we as conservatives and Christians can do to help Trump tackle this issue. What is there anything we can do to encourage Trump to look at, don't be a wimp on this issue, articulate it just like you brilliantly articulated the late-term abortion issue? What can we do?
Yeah, it's very easy, Pete. Share this video and get over your fear of not fitting in on Facebook, or not fitting, especially if you're older. You're probably on Facebook. You're looking at pictures of your grandchildren. You're looking at pictures of your family, and you're starting to get involved with this because you're being drawn into it by your children. Now, here's what you need to do. Step up, be courageous, share this video. You can even share it without a comment. Just saw this video, whatever. Just share it. Just get it out by social network, on the social networks, using the internet. This is the most potent thing we can do. Why is that, Peter? Because this show is going to be produced every day from now all the way through the election for 30 minutes, at least 30 minutes, maybe more, every afternoon, every weekday. This shows, and the truth is going to get out in a loving, charitable, detailed way about this issue. And that's what's going to change the minds of the people who are coming into power, the millennials who are in their 30s, headed into their 40s, and they are basing their judgments about what's right and wrong based on social networks. So if you're on,
and they're starved, Mike. They're starved for the truth. That's why the millennials are so bad.
They are starved, and they'll listen to you if you're a parent or a grandparent. And
we must de-brainwash young people. They're getting lots of the pro-life issue. Mike, I've always said you could explain the pro-life issue to a child in 30 seconds. You have defenseless, innocent children in what should be the safest place in the world, the womb, where they should be nurtured and cared for. It's God's, development protection zone in a woman's womb, and they are instantly murdered by the abortionist through no fault of their own. It's so easy to explain because it is such a human rights issue. However, the homosexual issue these days is very difficult, and it's made more so because we are not explaining it. If you think that the military the military doesn't let in, you can't fly a jet if your eyesight is bad. What is this idea that everybody has a right to serve in whatever they want to do in the military, Mike? That alone is the basis for why the military should not have made accommodations for practicing homosexuals. I mean, for goodness sake, I think that was an important issue, because if a guy defines himself by a perversion, which is, I am a man and I am sexually attracted to other men, which is a sin and it's perversion, is it a good idea to have him bunking with other men, getting dressed and showering in the barracks in the military? Of course it's not, because we're taking homosexuals at their word. They are defining themselves. They are saying, this is who I am. I am a person who is, and this is deviant, of course, because God did not design us this way. I am sexually attracted to other men. I get sexual pleasure from that. We don't want to mix that in the military. It has no place in the military. And by the way, a wonderful Catholic general named Peter Pace, I believe his name was, Mike, I don't know if you remember this, he articulated that. Somebody asked him once, why should the position on homosexuals in the military, and he said the military is about honor and morality. I don't have the exact thing, Jared, Peter Pace, and it's kind of getting us afield here, but there was a time when the military stood for honor and our whole country, by the way, all our institutions. and this is what I talked about at Gone Too Far, is the homosexual lobby has undermined all of our institutions, but we need to get back to the truth. And the answer for young people on the LGBTQ issue is start thinking, start using your brain, get off the politically correct talking points. Forget about what you're seeing in the movies and on Netflix, where every Netflix movie, I think it's a requirement on Netflix now, every movie has to have a positive portrayal of a of homosexual, a homosexual couple or something. I mean, we're so sexually correct now, all the media. But Mike, let's get to the Gone Too Far presser before I forget. We got 10 minutes left in the show. Jared, this was a wonderful event. We had black and white Christians together talking about the Equality Act, which is a dangerous piece of federal legislation, Mike, which would create special rights based on homosexuality and gender confusion, gender rebellion in the federal code, part of the noble 1964 Civil Rights Act. Mike, this would be the atom bomb of gay rights and trans rights activism. If they succeed, and God forbid if Trump were to buy into some sort of democratic compromise and sign the so-called Equality Act, which Scott Lively, who is one of our speakers, is now calling the Homo Supremacy Act. I used to call it the Criminalizing Christianity Act because that's what it would do, criminalize the outworking of Christianity, Mike. Mike, we have to stop this bill because it is utterly, it is a missile pointed at our freedom as Americans to live out our beliefs as we choose.
You know, it's interesting to me, Pete, they started with this argument of adding sexual orientation to the Human Rights Act and getting us to talk about discrimination and how evil it was at the state level. They got a lot of that done. It's interesting to me, they got marriage done using one vote on the Supreme Court, but they haven't got this done yet at the federal level. Yeah. And I don't think they're going to get it done. I don't think they're going to get it done. Obama
tried to do it by dictate, and now Trump is reversing some of that. And that's another thing Trump could have talked about. But of course, you can't talk about the LGBTQ issue as a conservative anymore, I suppose. And by the way, Trump, in that respect, I'm sure you're right. I'm sure he has a lot of approval from Republicans. Now, Jared, let's play the clip. This is the Gone Too Far press conference yesterday in Washington at the National Press Club. Imagine if Republicans started reaching out to African-American voters on the basis of moral truth. Play this clip, Jared.
The Equality Act bill is an example of an attempt to deliberately change our nation's First Amendment right to religious liberty and freedom of speech by changing one's choice of sexuality into a protected class. Passage of this legislation will effectively mute churches and other religious institutions from teaching a divine alternative to the LGBTQ's opinion on sexuality. Our speeches today and presentations will provide a perspective on H.R. 2282, the Equality Act bill, that is oftentimes ignored by the mainstream media, but reflects the position of what we believe the silent majority in America. So first, we'll have an opening prayer, a pledge, and a song by Reverend Randy.
Okay, Jared, pause that a sec. Okay, that is Pastor Stefan Broden, a wonderful man I just met yesterday. He was a speaker. Randy Short was a speaker. Scott Lively, as I said. Jared, I'm going to ask you to cut to the Randy Short. He's the next speaker, I believe. Cut to the speech of Randy Short, and then I'd like to work in Pastor Dan Fisher as well. I'm not sure if we can't get to him today. I'll play this tomorrow, Mike. But imagine. While he's pulling that up, okay, that is him right there. Go ahead and play Randy Short, another pastor, some of his comments, if you can, Jared.
All right, so I'm Johnny Rice, candidate for Congress.
Okay, that's you got to skip that part. Mike, while Jared's looking for that, Mike, answer my question. Imagine if Trump and the GOP started really aggressively working with African-American voters on the basis of morality.
Well, yeah, it would be a brilliant move, and I think there's definitely a connection there, especially on this issue. We were able to do some of that in Maine. We brought Alveda King into Maine, and she's of course very public and very active, and she's willing to speak out on this issue.
She's the niece of I think she's the niece of Martin Luther King.
Yes, and we brought her to the State House in Maine, and it proved to be very potent politically.
And it's just sad. It's sad that and I'm just, boy, if there are any leader activists, people from groups like the Family Research Council and American Family Association, you have got to use your influence with Trump to encourage him to use the bully pulpit to speak truth on this issue, because we cannot win if we cannot be heard. Okay, Jared, do you got that a better clip from Randy Short?
None other than the president of American Mothers for the Greater Washington area.
I think it's a little go up a little further in that. But yeah, go past this and then he'll start speaking again. I think he's going to be talking about the issue. If not him, then Dan Fisher. Okay, that's the pledge. It was a tremendous event, because I really got the impression that these black Christians were so, I mean, there was a unity among believers, which I think there's often not. There are racial differences, and there's white racism and there's black racism too. There's racism on all sides, and there's also just a lack of familiarity. And I think sometimes in the pro-family movement, Mike, there's sort of been a tokenism where we have certain black leaders who are famous and speak out, and we need to have a more real alliance, because I'll tell you what, the left, there is nobody who the secular pro-LGBTQ and also the atheist left, the so-called progressive left, there's nobody they fear more than black people of faith who are faithful to Scripture, because the whole LGBT movement moves ahead when the Bible is made less relevant. And I've met so many wonderful black Christians over the years who are so distraught over the Democratic Party's selling out on this issue. The Democratic Party, everybody, if you're not aware of it, go to their platform. The Democratic Party is now the party of abortion. As you saw, they did not applaud President Trump when he called for a law to ban viable babies. These are babies who could live outside the womb in the third trimester of birth, to ban them from being murdered by partial birth abortion, which is de facto infanticide. The Democrats would not stand up and cheer their president when he called for a law to ban that. That's where the Democratic Party is, and they're just as bad on homosexuality. They are for the Equality Act, which would criminalize Christianity, which would say to say you're a Christian, you run a business, Mike, you run a business, you're a faithful Christian, or you're a faithful Orthodox Jew, or you're even a faithful Muslim. You are a believing Muslim, and you run a restaurant, and you do not want the hostess of your restaurant to be a man. You want to hire a beautiful woman, a well-spoken, beautiful woman to be the hostess of your restaurant, right, Mike? Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, the Equality Act passes, and Dana Smith, who used to be Dan Smith, comes up to the Mike Heath restaurant and says, "Mr. Heath, I'm well qualified to be a host. I was a host for many years in other restaurants, and I'm applying for this job." And you say, "Oh my goodness, this is a man. This is a man. I can see that he's a man, because many transgender, so-called trans women, which are biological men who want to be women, they're not really good women. My saying is, men make bad women." Anyways, you say no, and guess what? He who's pretending to be a she could sue you for discrimination under the Equality Act. Mike, that's what we're talking about. That's how dangerous this legislation could be. You could face a federal lawsuit, a federal investigation. You could be put out of business through the Equality Act because you would not hire a biological man, so-called trans woman, to be the hostess at your restaurant. That's what we're talking about. But Mike, we're running out of time, so I'm going to have you take out the show. I got to run. Take it away, Mike, and thanks again for another show, everybody.
All right. Thanks for tuning in today, and go to americansfortruth.com before you're done today and make a donation to Americans for Truth. Click on that blue donate button and let us know you support Americans for Truth live. God bless you for tuning in today.